Charlie's got to get his money in there somehow. So I'm on board with it. If you woke up tomorrow morning, Monday morning, 8 o'clock, and you found yourself in first century Israel, first century Jerusalem, there would be some things that you'd have to get used to. Try this one on. No sausage or bacon ever. Ever. Never wake up and smell the smell of bacon or sausage cooking. Ever. You say, no bacon, what am I going to wrap my rock badger steak in? Well, there's bad news for that too. No rock badgers. Can't eat them. There's a lot of food regulations, right? I'm just kidding. I just wanted to say rock badger. You can't eat rock badger if you're a Jew. There's a lot of things you can't eat. There's a lot of things you can't participate in. And so just the dietary laws would kind of throw you for a loop. But you'd also have to get used to some other things. You'd have to get used to Sabbath. How many of you rest on Saturday? A couple of you. Good for you. But sometimes Saturday's the day you go to work all week, and then Saturday you got to do the things that you weren't doing while you were at work. And on the weekend you got to work real hard to get stuff done around the house, and you're going out all day, every day. You take a good break for church. That's why some of you sleep in here. And that's why I let it. If you need Sabbath, you need Sabbath. If you need to sleep, this is a great place to do it. We have really comfortable chairs. Don't try. If sleep overtakes you, the spirit of sleep possesses you, go for it. But we work so hard, but you'd have to get used to Sabbath. And then most of us aren't very good with rest, and we're not very good with rules, and Sabbath is full of all of them. It's not just take a break, it's you got to take a break, and you got to take a break in a certain way. And you can't walk this distance, and you can't carry this many things, and you can't lift up this many things. It's just, there are so many rules and regulations, but the problem is that there's not just rules and regulations, there's rules and regulations and loopholes to rules and regulations. So if you want to carry something, you take a servant who's not Jewish and you have him take it a good distance away from you, and you would walk to it and carry it a ways, and then he would carry it a ways, and so you would do things that could get you around the rules, but you had to go around the rules the right way. Now, you'd also have to get used to the new style of church, which really wasn't a whole lot of church. It wasn't like this. They didn't meet together a whole lot. Now on Sabbath they would get together sometimes and read from the Torah. They would read from the Psalms. They would chant. They would be taught. But the thing you have to get used to is that when you worshiped, a lot of times it had to do with killing an animal. We don't do that a lot here. Publicly slaughter animals. We don't do that ever, for those of you who are visiting. Sometimes I'm sarcastic and don't say that I'm joking, so just assume I'm joking if it's crazy. Okay? That's how we roll here. So, we don't slaughter animals a whole lot, and we're not used to that, but their whole religious system, their whole cultic system revolved around a slaughtered animal. They had so many sacrifices for so many different things. They had burnt offerings, they had sin offerings, they had guilt offerings, they had atonement, they had peace offerings, they had wave offerings. What's a wave offering? Pick up a dove, you do this. That's it. But they had every sort of offering for every sort of thing, and it's all laid out several times in the most boring books of the Bible. Wait, they're not supposed to be called? Read them. I'm just saying. They're great, but they're tough to get through. There's some real meat there, but you got to wade in pretty good to get to. The book of Numbers is mostly just numbers. But they're all laid it out, and you got to know all the sacrifices for all the, well, actually, luckily, you don't have to know all the sacrifices for all the things. The priests do. So you would show up and give an offer, a sacrifice, but you'd show up and say, hey, listen, for many things, I have a rash on my head, to there's some mold on my wall, to my cousin has leprosy and he touched me in a family reunion, to I fell into an open grave. I mean, like, for everything that you ran into that had a negative connotation in your life, you would go to the priest, and the priest would say, oh, I know what to do in this situation. The Bible tells me what to do in this situation, and here's what you need to do. Bring me a calf. Bring me a firstborn lamb. Bring me a dove. Do a thousand different things, but you got to do it. You bring me a dove, and we'll cut that sucker's head off, and we'll lay him on a table, and we'll light him on fire, and then the priest will eat some of it, and it'll be great. There were a lot of things to have to remember. Now, your job was not to remember the sacrificial system. Your job, if you woke up tomorrow morning in Jerusalem in 1st century, and your job would be to stay clean. To not run into your brother-in-law who has leprosy at the family reunion. To not fall into an open grave. To not eat things that you shouldn't eat. To not swallow a gnat accidentally. To not, riding on your Jewish moped with your mouth open is a bad idea in the 1st century. So you got to do all these things that keep you pure and clean, because God wants a nation that's pure and clean. God wants a nation that follows the rules they told you. God wants a nation that knows all the legalistic tricks, all the regulations, all the loopholes to make sure that they are clean. Have you ever heard of the Shabbat elevator? These exist now. These are mostly in Jerusalem, but in some big cities, in sections where they have major, big Jewish population, a big Jewish population that follows the Sabbath, they have Shabbat elevators. Shabbat elevator is an elevator that opens on the ground floor, closes, goes to the top floor, opens, goes to the second top floor, opens, and so on and so forth. So that Jews don't have to break the law. Interesting, right? This is a regulation that says they don't want to break the laws of do not build anything on the Sabbath, because if you hit a button on an elevator, it closes a circuit, and they believe that rabbis have believed that means you built something. And you are supposed to write on the Sabbath, and if you push a button, the display might show up that you're going to a certain floor, and that you have consequently made something right on the Sabbath. You see how the rules and the regulations can get ridiculous? Here's an example. I believe this is my next slide. Exodus 23:19 says, do not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. That's pretty easy, right? It says don't do that, but that's just I feel like I can follow that rule. I don't feel like I'm going to ever catch myself. And, what did Exodus 23 say again? I think the King James says, do not cook a kid in its mother's milk. But it's talking about goats. They didn't have a problem with human beings. Now, oral tradition started to say, well, this verse means do not eat meat and dairy simultaneously. That's what that verse means. Now, some of you are saying, but I thought it just meant what it said it meant. No. Rules and regulations are always built upon more rules and regulations. And then the even later oral traditions, when they were writing them down, they said you can't eat poultry and dairy simultaneously. So how did Exodus 23, when it says don't cook a young goat in its mother's milk, turn into forbidding a beautiful Chick-fil-A deluxe chicken sandwich? You can't eat a chicken sandwich with cheese on it. How did it go from one to the next? You've opened the door. B-I-B-L-E. That's my favorite song, so I want to sing it. Now, They had all these rules and regulations set up, and for some of us, it would be hard for us to learn the rules. We would be so lost in first century Jerusalem, learning the life that they lived. But there would be just a flare-up of connection with what was going on. There would be a sense of familiarity. A sense of familiarity in what was happening. Because while we may not understand their particular rules and regulations and their particular loopholes to the rules and the regulations, we would understand rules and regulations. We laugh at a Shabbat elevator, which is just a way of saying a Sabbath elevator. We laugh at that and say that's ridiculous. But I was a part of a church one time when we had back before I was even born, a long time ago, there was they said they believed it was a sin to eat in the church building. It's a sin to eat in the church building. This wasn't just Church of Christ, this was brothers from other mothers all over the place. We all had this belief that it was a sin to eat in the church building. So, we built multi-purpose rooms for multiple purposes, and those multiple purposes being eating and eating and eating. So we built multi-purpose rooms and we said, we can eat in there. And so preachers actually went around preaching about how sinful it is to have a multi-purpose room connected to a sanctuary, although they would have never called it a sanctuary. And so we had them separate and apart. No hallways connected, and then it's okay to eat in that building, but if it's connected, it's not okay. And we say, wow, we were so silly back then. I was a part of a church that wouldn't allow instrumental music in weddings in its services, because we don't want the place to light on fire. And so, it's called spontaneous condemnation. And so, but because it was not connected, they had a fellowship hall that they would allow people to have wedding ceremonies with full orchestras and bands and stuff. And so they would have the instrumental stuff over there, and then the a cappella weddings. All the kids nowadays want a cappella weddings. Would happen in the main auditorium. Well, we moved churches and built a new fellowship hall. We moved on the outskirts of town, and they didn't have a fellowship hall, so they built a new one, a real nice one, and connected it by a hallway, like our hallway here, to the place where we actually worship. And I am not kidding you, this is the actual wording of the ruling that came down from the leadership, because the multi-purpose room is now connected by a hallway and not an open awning. It would be, and here's the word that just gets me, unbiblical to have weddings with instruments in the multi-purpose room any longer. And the church said, what? Are you kidding me? This is how we've set it up. So legalistic that we've got to have rules that protect us from breaking the rules, that protect us from breaking the rules of God. See, here's why we like rules. It's because when I follow the rules, I am better than the people who I know are not following the rules. And when I break the rules, there's grace. When I break the rules, God is forgiven. But when I follow the rules, man, those people who don't, I'm not a fan of them at all. Have you ever been in the express lane and been counting the people's items in front of you? I once noticed that I did that. Someone had 5 more items than what was the legal limit. The limit was 20. It's really easy to hit 20 items in the express lane. 20 items. She had 25. I know, I counted thrice. So I was really upset with this woman. Impeding, I had 4 items. I had 4 items. And it is no longer an express lane, I said to myself. And so I grumpily checked out. In an angrily way, walked to my car and drove 5 miles over the speed limit all the way home. When someone else breaks the rules, man, I feel very holy when I'm not breaking the same rule as they are. But when I break the rules, well, it's just sort of what people do. We like our rules and regulations because rules and regulations make us feel very good about ourselves. And finding the loopholes, the hallways, or the open awning to the rules and regulations make us feel good about ourselves. And it's directly into this culture, the culture of 1st century Jerusalem, 1st century Israel, and 21st century rule and regulation and loopholes to rules and regulations of America that Jesus speaks a very powerful word. Matthew chapter 5. Verse 8 says, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." Now, when Jesus says, "Blessed are the pure," the wording he uses is real similar to actually dead on, to the word for clean. When the Jews talk about being clean and unclean, they use this word if they were speaking Greek. Actually, every other time this word shows up in Matthew's gospel, it's translated clean. And it's talking about some ritualistic cleansing. The leper needed to be cleansed. It's this word. They did this so that they would be clean. It's this word. And so when he says, "Blessed are the pure, blessed are the clean," this is a very common teaching that rabbis said often. Blessed are the pure. They say, "Blessed are the clean, for they are not unclean. Blessed are the clean, for they have not sullied their reputation. Blessed are the rule followers, because they are right and others are wrong." That made the hearers feel really good about themselves. A message of hope that's just a message of hope only if you try really hard. But when Jesus says, "Blessed are the pure, blessed are the clean," in their hearts, he's asking something more of us than just being able to follow the rules properly. When people say things like, "Well, I was raised right," or "We do it right," my response is always, "Well, I'm sorry, but how right?" Like in the end, it's never all the way right, is it? You don't worship all the way right. You aren't raised all the way right. No one's all the way right. What are you saying when you say I'm right? You mean I'm more correct than someone else. And if God is judging me on a hierarchical system where some people are better and some people are worse, and He's grading on a curve, then maybe that would work out. Maybe being clean as opposed to unclean, being right as opposed to incorrect, or being pure as opposed to impure. In our actions and our deeds up to a certain point. Maybe that's pretty important. If God is grading on the curve. Jesus says, Your purity is in your heart. Now, a lot of people would then say, well, hold on a minute. Are you saying the rules and regulations don't matter? Are you saying the rules don't matter? No. I'm saying the rules matter more than we think they do. And they matter for different reasons than we often think they do. You see, the first century, or when the Israelites were brought out of Egypt, they had a bit of a problem. When they were rescued from 430 years of slavery in Egypt, they had some problems. And most of those problems derived from being in slavery for 430 years in a pagan place. So for longer than this country, the United States of America, has been in existence as a country, they were in slavery in Egypt. In slavery, they lived in a place where there was a God for everything. God for sun, God for cats, God for dogs, God for hippopotamuses, God for everything. Hippopotami, I'm sorry. There's a God for everything, and they were also raised in a culture where the rich and the rulers were treated like gods, and the poor and the slaves and the widows and the orphans and the aliens were treated like dirt. So God gets His people together. He rescues His people, and they have an issue of the heart. They are willing to worship any God, and they are thinking that some people need to be better than other people. And if you read through the laws of God, all of them are, what they're trying to do is get them to do two things. The first is to worship God and God alone. Every law, majority of the food laws had to do with, they were disallowed from eating food that was worshipped by other groups. Like if the pig was a sacred animal to the Philistines, the Babylonians, the dog was a sacred animal to Egyptians, cats were a sacred animal to Egyptians. Tells you a lot about the Egyptians. I like owning cats too, if you're a visitor. And you're a cat person, we still love you. By grace, we love you. But everything that they were disallowed to eat was often worshipped locally by some other group. So he said, don't eat those things, don't participate in those things, because it's easy to fall back into the old traps of worshiping other gods. And the way you're going to sacrifice to me is a way you haven't sacrificed any other place. It's completely different. We're going to stick with the sacrificial system, but we want you, all of these rules revolve around worshiping God and God alone. And the other rules revolved around making sure that they didn't treat other people less than they wanted to be treated. Does this start to sound familiar? Every law in the Old Testament revolves around two things. Love God, love people. And God was wanting His people to change their hearts from worshiping many gods to loving one. He wanted to change their hearts from believing that some people are better than other people to believing that everyone should be loved just as God has loved us. They had a heart problem. And you can imagine how angry God got when these people got really good at following the rules and really bad at loving God and loving people. Isaiah 1 says, woe to the sinful nation, a people whose guilt is great. This is talking about the Israelite people. A people whose guilt is great, a brood of evildoers, children given to corruption. They have forsaken the Lord, they have spurned the Holy One of Israel, and turned their backs on Him. Why should you be beaten anymore? Why do you persist in rebellion? Your whole head is injured, your whole heart afflicted. From the sole of your foot to the top of your head, there is no soundness, only wounds and welts and open sores, not cleansed or bandaged or soothed with olive oil. Get down to verse 10. Hear the word of the God of the Lord. You rulers of Sodom, Now he's talking to Israel, but he calls them Sodom when he really wants to get a nerve. Listen to the instructions of your God, you people of Gomorrah. Same thing happening here. The multitude of your sacrifices, what are they to me, says the Lord? I have more than enough burnt offerings of rams and the fat of fattened animals. I have no pleasure in the blood of bulls and lambs and goats. When you come to appear before me, who asks this of you, this trampling of my courts? Stop bringing meaningless offerings. Your incense is detestable to me. New moons, Sabbaths, and convocations, I cannot bear your worthless assemblies. Your new moon feast and your appointed festivals, I hate with all my being. God set this stuff up. They have become a burden to me. I am weary of bearing them. When you spread out your hands in prayer, I hide my eyes from you. Even when you offer many prayers, I am not listening. Your hands are full of blood. Now, when this chapter starts off, one of the things I'm thinking is, rebellious people, not living up to the rules, not doing the things they're supposed to be doing, not worshiping correctly, not doing the right thing. But this brood of evildoers, this children given to corruption, they are offering many sacrifices. They are keeping the Sabbath. It seems as though they are following all of the rules. They are a spiritual people, lifting holy hands in prayer. Hands that God says are blood-stained hands. God in Isaiah 1 is saying, you have kept the rules, you have been pure, but it's not in your heart you're pure. You know the regulations, you know how to do everything properly. You know how to separate a multipurpose room from a sanctuary, and you know how to not call it a sanctuary, because other denominations do that, and that makes us uncomfortable. You know all the rules and the regulations, but in your heart, where's the purity? Listen to what he says to these people. People with blood on their hands. Wash and make yourself clean. Take your evil deeds out of my sight. Stop doing wrong. Learn to do right. Seek justice. Defend the oppressed. Take up the cause of the fatherless. Plead the case of the widow. Show me your love, God says, not by your rules, not by your regulations, not by following what is written, but by loving those and helping those who need love and need help the most. Do not feel good that you are right. Because in the end, how right are you? C.S. Lewis says that God is not seeking people who do good things. He is seeking good people. He's not seeking people who follow the rules perfectly. He's seeking people who understand what the rules were wanting in the first place. That I love God beyond everything else that I've got, and I love people. I love people more than I love myself. I love people like God has loved me. He wants that from you. When he says the pure in heart, the clean, he's referencing this whole system of rules and how they haven't acknowledged that it's about changing your insides. Paul sometimes talks about the heart. The Greek word is kardia. And sometimes he talks about the stomach. And sometimes it's translated just your spirit. Sometimes it's translated your heart even. But the Greek word for stomach is probably my favorite Greek word. Splagnon. It's the grossest sounding Greek word. He says right here. And we've got that feeling. He says in your gut. Just at your very core, you are what God imagined his people would be. Well, I follow all the rules. You follow all the rules. All of them. Every single one of the rules you follow. Because if you want to go by that system, if you want to live by that standard, good luck. But if you want to live by the grace of God, in which the pure of heart, the people who love God and love people, those people will see God. And that's kind of a big deal in this first century Jerusalem town you're staying in. Because there was only one person, and he was the most important person who got to see God, and he only got to do it once a day, once a year. Go in, and he had to take a bath. I mean, that's crazy. And then he had to wash his clothes and put on the right garments and put them on the right way and offer the right sacrifices and have the right number of goats and have the right types of goats. And he had to cast lots. There was gambling, and he had to send one out into the wilderness, and he had to slaughter one. And when he was done, he had to wash the right sort of way, or the whole thing was annoying. It was a mess. And never mind the process of becoming the one who got to go in and see God. Here Jesus is saying, pure in heart, people who get it on the inside, people who understand that it's not just about the rules you follow and getting all the regulations right, or even knowing the loopholes to the regulations. Most of you have children, have done this. I've done it, so I can make fun of it. You're supposed to close your eyes in prayer. It says in the Bible you're supposed to do that. And it doesn't say that. I'm just joking. But our culture says you're supposed to close your eyes when you pray. So you're supposed to bow your head. You're supposed to close your eyes when you pray. And so I bow my head. I close my eyes. But kids have this radar of when their parents have closed their eyes, both of them. They just know instinctively when to run, when to do things strange. So we close our eyes and bow our heads, but we leave this little slit of light let in so we can keep an eye on our fuzzy children, right? That's crazy. Just let your kids, you know? But what's the difference between open a little bit and open all the way? But we love our regulations, we love our rules and our systems of rules, and we got to get it right, we got to do the right thing. But frankly, who cares if you're doing all the right things? And don't love God and love people. I think Paul talks about that at one point when he says in 1 Corinthians 13, if you can summon all sorts of prophecies and you know everything there is to know, but you don't love, just like someone's taking a stick and hitting a cymbal. You're worthless. If you have so much faith that you can move a mountain, and you don't love, it's just pathetic. It's worthless. If your purity is only in the acts of worship, or if you've gotten church right, but you don't love, it's my belief you will not see God. I know that sounds harsh, but if you think your rules and your regulations and you're following the rules and the regulations and the loopholes to the rules and the regulations are going to get you to God, you are on a failed path. You won't make it. But it's only by following the one who can indeed make our heart pure and giving our life, the one who has truly given up himself to make our hearts pure, that we can see God. It's those of us who have accepted the grace of Jesus Christ, accepted the forgiveness of Him, that we truly can stand in His presence. Pure in heart, clean on the inside. Jesus has another saying about this. He says, why do you wash the outside of the cup when the inside of the cup is full of death? Why do you think that you're following the rules can make you holy, when indeed following the rules can only make you haughty. Following Jesus will make you holy. And you won't be the perfect person, you won't get it all right, but you will be following the one who did. You'll be following the one who redeemed you from all your mistakes, and you have mistakes. Thank God we need Jesus. Thank God Jesus' death was not in vain. We are an unholy people, an unpure people, an unclean people, but He has made us pure, He has made us holy, He has made us clean, and He has operated on us straight to the heart, so that you can rest assured if you will see God. If you aren't following Jesus, now, if you aren't following Jesus, we would love to talk to you about entering that life, seeing what that looks like, how that process works. But if you've been following Jesus, but it's just been on this rule-based system, and you feel actually really holy about your following of Jesus, that you get church right and you do all the right things, it's my belief that you need to repent of that too. Because that's not following Jesus, that's following rules. One will make you haughty, the other will make you holy. So if your Christianity has been making you haughty, it's a good sign you might need to work on some stuff. But if you've never gotten a chance to follow this Jesus, today's the day, my friend. Because you don't have to come with a pure heart. You don't have to come with it all together. You come just like you sit right now. God will make your heart pure. Maybe years and years of Him training you, that you'll be able to throw off the yoke of trying, so that you can follow the Jesus who will train you to be holy, who will cleanse you of your past wrongs and of your future wrongs, and make you someone that you never dreamed you could be. Someone who loves God, who loves people, someone who is pure in heart, someone who sees God. You want that this morning? Please come.